everybody, it's Wendy Sellers, the HR lady, with my co-host, JC.
That's me, and yes, you are. It is so good to see you again, Wendy Sellers. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing fantastic. Sweating my butt off down here in Florida, but hopefully winter is coming sooner than later.
I wouldn't even know. Look, ladies and gentlemen, we use the Zoom camera so we can see each other while we're recording. And Wendy, you look like $1 million today. I got to be honest with you.
Thank
you really do.
I
don't know. Did you go to a wedding, or is this just Tuesday?
I just, got out of my pajamas and,
Oh, I see. I wake up
showered.
this way. I just wake up like this.
Yes, I just wake up this way. No, I did shower, got my hair done today.
Love it.
And going out to dinner with some friends later. But it is interesting, JC. You work from home as well, correct?
Yeah.
So it's funny, I've worked from home for quite some time, but before the pandemic, I was definitely going into someplace for a lot more. And then everybody said, okay, you only need to come in if you're actually doing a conference or a training or something like that, which is fantastic for me because it allowed me to move closer to the beach. However, it also meant that, okay, you got to go clothes shopping because all my clothes were professional and now all my clothes are like beach wear. So just this past month or two, I'm like buying a little bit more like, nicer clothes. I'm like, all right, now the pandemic's kind of over. I need to look like I actually am not homeless. So thank you for noticing.
Hey, it's huge. It really changes the way that we think and feel about things, just getting dressed up to get dressed up sometimes. I can't lie. I every now and then I'll put the suit on and just walk around the kitchen. It's time to wash the mushrooms. I don't know. Hey, I got one for you here, though, too. There was this lawyer friend of mine I knew that he, walked into the courtroom wearing nothing but his underwear, and he asked, can we please postpone the trial? And the judge replied, of course. How can we start when you've forgotten your lawsuit? You get it? You get it? All right.
Oh, sorry, folks. Corny jokes here. Hey, speaking of lawsuits, I want to talk about losing employment lawsuits without ever going to court. AKA, an employee files a complaint with the EEOC, which for many of our listeners who are HR professionals, but there's also many who are new into HR, who are managers that also are wearing the HR title because their company's too small for HR or too cheap. But you can, you don't ever assume that, oh, this employee will never sue me. Oh, they're not going to take the time to get a lawyer, or they don't have the money to get a lawyer, because many people can go to the EEOC for free online nowadays, and our tax money covers that. So I can go, in theory, and go onto the EEOC and file a complaint against, my employer. I am my employer, so I won't do that.
Yeah, don't file against yourself.
But we really need to remind the executives that it's not just about getting a lawyer, taking time off to getting a lawyer, finding a lawyer that's going to take our court case, because the EEOC has a duty to look at, any claim that comes in online to say, okay, is this worth taking? And either way, they have to address it. And so losing employment lawsuits without ever going to court can happen.
And for people out there not familiar, the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, is responsible for enforcing federal laws to make it illegal to discriminate against job applicant or employees because of a person's race, color, religion, sex, including pregnancy and related conditions, gender identity and sexual orientation, and national, what's the last one there? National, what's it, Wendy?
National orientation, or like where they are from, if they moved here. But it's also not just about if they moved here from U.S., from another country. It could just be, it's assumed that they did. Right. So that, what assume means. This is the clean podcast today, so we won't spell it out for you, but go ahead and spell it out and read it.
Yeah. Or maybe even discriminating because they're from, I don't know, like Apopka or something like that,
Yeah. Right.
Look,
Alabama, which has been in the news lately. And that's a whole other conversation.
The EEOC records from previous years show that the agency gets tens of thousands of discrimination complaints every year. And usually retaliation, race, disability, and sex discrimination are those types of discrimination cases that they get the most reports. And resolution rates can be different. Not every case ends up in court. Many cases are settled through mediation or deals, or they're thrown out because they have no basis.
Right. And so thank you for bringing that up, JC, because I do want to, let the folks that are listening today know that just because somebody did go on the EEOC to file a claim, that doesn't mean that it's going to go to a lawsuit. The EEOC has to make the decision to say, okay, do you have the right to sue or not? But they, at a minimum, reach out to the company and make you pretty uncomfortable that says, okay, hey, we have a complaint against you from one of your current or former employees or an applicant. What do you want to do about it? And just that conversation, it's not even a conversation, it's usually an email or a letter, that it's pretty uncomfortable. You're like, oh my goodness, I am on the EEOC's radar. Here's my question, JC, is why is your employee or a candidate I can see, but why is your employee going onto the website to the EEOC to file something instead of coming to, I don't know, a manager or HR to say, hey, I have a concern? Yeah. It's usually because they don't feel comfortable doing so, or they know, or they feel, again, they assume that you're not going to do a darn thing about it and you're going to blame them or you're going to fire them. And now they do have to go and file a suit. So I just helped somebody out recently. I usually represent employers. I'm not a lawyer, but, as a consultant, but I always, even today, I'm going to end this podcast with, you need anything at any time, everybody just, reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to help you, give us some advice, no matter if you're an employer or an employee. But I just helped an employee. It was a friend of a friend. It was actually their elderly mother recently who reached out to me and said, I'm being discriminated against. And I said, okay, here's all the information that you need. It sounds like they're trying to can you, but I don't know the rest of the information and you're not my client, so I'm not going to get involved in it. But you can go ahead and file a claim with the EEOC for free. And what that does, this is what I was telling her, is it's going to, hopefully, if they're smart, it's going to stop that company from, finding a reason to terminate you while there's a lawsuit, so to speak, in play. And that is actually what happened. Fortunately, that company didn't really know what was going on. And they actually fired the manager and said, no, we're working with you. You're right. This was wrong. And so I was so happy that I was able to help this elderly person who was being discriminated against. We think she was being discriminated against based on age and a few other things as well. And they got rid of that manager just by filing an EEOC claim. Now, I'm pretty sure she canceled that claim afterwards because she said, all right, we're working it out. Folks, though, just because somebody takes that claim back, so to speak, you can't really do that. The EEOC still has a duty to look at it and say, whoa, this could be a class action. And we're going after the company, even though you, Mary, don't want to go after the company anymore.
Here's a question for you. When it comes to an employer, then, from your position as a consultant helping an employer, if I, as an employee, ask the question, could you provide information about the company's anti-discrimination or anti-harassment policies? Aren't there a lot of small businesses, small to medium-sized businesses? Well, I know it used to be this way. It may not be so much anymore, where they don't actually have a policy written down in regards to anti-discrimination or anti-harassment. Do you run into that a lot?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's usually, where I usually get my new clients from because, something's hitting the fan and they're like, I don't know what to do right now. I'm like, what does your policy say? And they just get chuckle and they usually go, yeah, we don't have one of those.
Do you have to have one?
With that too?
Do you have
You don't have to. So federally, U.S. federal laws, you do not need to have a handbook. Some states, however, say, and California is one of them, say you need to have some kind of statement somewhere. It doesn't need to be in a handbook. It could be in a policy. It could be on your website. It could be on your intranet. You still need to provide your employees with the information about their rights. What you do need to have is that poster that's in the break room, And guess what? Not everybody has a break room, as we were just talking about, because we work from home. But that means your break room needs to be your payroll portal, your HRIS system, maybe your intranet if you have one. And everybody needs to know about it. They need to have access to it. It needs to be easily understood in a language that they could understand. So you don't necessarily have to have a handbook or a policy. If I wasn't a lawyer, or if I am the HR lady, I would sit here going, no, you need to have one. You need to have one. It needs to be crystal clear to everyone. Here's our policies. We follow the law. if you break our policies and or the law, here's what's going to happen to you.
Do you then also have something bundled in there to handle or address reasonable accommodation or religious accommodations for employees too? Or would that be separate, do you think?
My opinion is it should all be in the handbook, and it should be really in a very simple handbook that's not 90 pages. Listen, folks, nobody's reading your handbook. Okay. If you have 100 employees, maybe 2 are reading it, but not many people are reading your handbook line by line. When they are reading it, though, it's when their employment attorney or the EEOC says, hey, can you give me a copy of your handbook on this complaint you just filed with us? And then they're sending it over to them, and your handbook is either outdated, it's inaccurate, it's not really copying the law. I also say, JC, is why do you have to rewrite everything into your handbook? Can't you just say, we follow all laws? Here's the information on the EEOC website or on our website on, maybe the state of New York or the state of California. So why reinvent the wheel, and why have, 7 more pages that really you could just have a website link there? However, if you're using website links, then all your employees need to have access to that website link, either by a company computer, a company internet. Many companies that have manual labor might have like a kiosk in the break room where people can log in to see their payroll, to see, submit their benefits, and then also sign off and read the handbook. Many of my manufacturing clients, we do have one handbook or a couple sets of handbooks that are in the break room, and they're just in a folder in there for everybody to have easy access to, so they can quickly look at it instead of having to figure out, how do I get this on an internet when I don't have internet at home?
All right, I've got something I got to throw your way real quick, Ms. Wendy Sellers, the HR lady. In the fiscal year 2022, the EEOC educated over 225,000 individuals nationwide about employment discrimination rights, securing more than $513.7 million in financial assistance for over 38,000 discrimination victims, including $40 million from lawsuits and $132 million for federal employees. The agency's budget exceeding accomplishments underscored its efficiency in combating discrimination. It made substantial strides in addressing systematic discrimination, advancing racial justice, curbing retaliation, ensuring pay equity, promoting diversity and inclusion, and exploring AI's role in employment decisions. Now, when we think about that, that's the EEOC educating 225,000 individuals nationwide. Isn't there training or something that could come into play even before the EEOC stepping in to deliver theirs that may even prevent some of these financial restitution situations and filings and claims and lawsuits and all that above and beyond?
Yeah, there is training everywhere. I offer training. I would say, make sure that you are connecting with an employment attorney in your state, first of all, to make sure your policies are okay. But then, you could be joining HR associations, or not joining them, just tagging along for the lunch or the dinner event, and then listening to their presenters who are highly educated in HR and these laws. Like, don't go it alone. Don't assume that the law from, 2000 is still accurate, because, there have been so many changes in laws the past couple of years during a pandemic. And then even now there are laws that are changing like crazy, or at least being, more guidance by the EEOC, by the ADA that is coming out. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. One other thing that I wanted to talk about, JC, first of all, let me go back to all that money that the EEOC is spending on educating people. When I first saw those dollar amounts, I was like, there's my tax dollars. And then I also said, you know what? I'd rather them educate companies on how to avoid discrimination than be using that money to sue companies to get them to stop discriminating. Because I know I deal with a lot of small businesses, and they didn't get into being a small business to say, oh, I'm going to be an HR expert. They got into it to make this widget or make this pizza or whatever it might be. And then they realize afterwards, oh my goodness, I didn't know I had to follow all these laws, or I knew there was laws, but I didn't know they were this, intense. And now I need to become an expert. And that's where I think the EEOC and many other government organizations are saying, you know what, we owe it to the country to educate people, educate companies as well as employees about these are the rights, these are the laws, and these are how you could easily avoid discrimination lawsuits, either by a private attorney or by the EEOC.
Losing employment lawsuits without ever going to court. Ms. Wendy Sellers, the HR lady. When we think about litigation, success in litigation, we think about resolution before litigation. Losing employment lawsuits without going to court, without litigation. Talk to me here. What's some of your overarching thoughts on that with this whole litigation aspect and whatnot?
Well, if you follow the EEOC and the ADA, which Americans with Disabilities Act, I get notices every day from them, and oh my God, they're just suing companies left and right, and most of them deserve it. They really, really do deserve it. But that's the thing is, like I mentioned before, you don't need an employment attorney or any kind of attorney in most cases, meaning the employee does it in order to file a lawsuit. They could often just go online to the EEOC. However, you may want to consider something, maybe not, called mandatory arbitration.
What's that?
And so
Talk to me.
Many companies used to have this as, you know, as a standard that says, hey, in our handbook or in our employment offer, hey, Wendy, welcome to the team, blah, blah, blah. Here's the policy. Here's the rules of our organization. You can't sue us without going through mandatory arbitration.
All right.
And that means that both sides agree to settle any disagreements through arbitration instead of going to court. However,
all right, so wait a second though. So that's part of the huge stack of papers that people just sign when they get hired. Okay, I gotcha. Yeah. So back to you. You said it's not legal.
The huge stack of the huge stack of papers that nobody reads, but they sign anyways because they're like, this is great. And so a few things. First of all, it is still legal in most of the United States, but there are some states, and I'll just, California, New York tried. I don't remember if they succeeded or not. They're usually the two states that have the craziest things pro employees on everything. So I'm not against mandatory arbitration, but you may be wrongfully putting terminology in your handbook or in that stack of papers, the policies, and it's not really going to get you out of it. It may actually get you in more trouble. So my question is, if you were my client and you said, I want to put mandatory arbitration, I would say, okay, talk to me a little bit more about that. Why? Have you been sued in the past? I really say, like, hey, if you have an open management team that's trained on laws and you have an HR team that's trained on laws and empathy, you're never going to need the mandatory arbitration. You're never going to need an employment attorney, as I'm winking, wink, wink, because we almost always need that anyways, because we don't know how employees are going to react. But mandatory arbitration, I don't know if it's going to continue to be allowed. So we're just going to have to find out with the laws that continue to change at a super rapid pace in the past few years. There's also another thing called alternative conflict resolution, which is also a form of arbitration. But the bottom line is train your managers to be HR, train your HR people to be HR, train your owners to be HR and to say, hey, let's try to avoid court at all costs, because even if the employee gets there for free, because JC, here's the other thing. You and I both know that an employment attorney, one that defends employees, they might take the case on for free anyways as well.
Right.
Because they're going to say, we're going to take part of that settlement. And yeah, Wendy, you got a great case and we're going to sue the heck out of ABC company. You're going to get money. We're going to get money. So don't worry about spending any money here. We're going to win or we're not, but you're not going to have to pay us if you lose. And so it's more important for companies to go, wait a minute. I don't want to be on the receiving end of the EEOC or, John Morgan. And so make sure that you're not on that side. Other things that I want, because I know we're getting close to the end here. Other things that I do want you to know about is things, like juries. A jury can say, nope, we're throwing out arbitration. There could be court trials. What happens if you go to a court trial, with or without a jury, even if it's just a lawyer versus a lawyer? It's a ton of money. It's a ton of time. And you know where else it ends up? All over social media and all over the regular media. Yeah. Even if you win, even if you win as an employer, it ends up everywhere. And candidates and current employees go, whoa, I want to back away from this company and I don't want to work with them anymore, even if they win. And so it's just not worth it. Get your act together and make sure that you understand that it's not just about fighting the EEOC. It's also, I've been in one situation with one client that they called me to help. We had to get a lawyer involved. And honestly, I don't want to say they were in the wrong. They didn't necessarily discriminate, but they didn't prevent it and they didn't have any policies or any kind of internal help. So in the end, they ended up taking the easy way out and said, okay, we're going to give you money to go away and we're going to lock it down so that you can't talk about this anywhere. Well, all the internal employees knew about it and they were mad on both sides. They're like, you didn't really discriminate, but then you just said that you did.
The damage was already done. Yeah.
I stopped working with them. I helped them out through that process. And I was like, I'm not working with you anymore. You guys are not good people right now. And you did not set this up correctly. And then on top of that, they didn't change their policies afterwards. Here's the last thing I'll say about that one. They were a government entity, a very small government entity. And it was in a county that I lived in at the time. And I was so mad because it was my tax dollars that was being put to use to fight this claim that may or may not be wrong. But either way, the local people that were paying all that did not know what was really going on and where their money was going. So anyway, more information on arbitration. We can definitely share that online. We want to make sure that, again, you don't walk away from this thinking, hey, I have a lawyer, I have arbitration agreements. We'll never get sued, because the EEOC really is looking for class action lawsuits, and they will figure out a way to get around your arbitration agreements. And they may just not even be legal where you live, and or your agreement may have just been really shady in your handbook or that policy that no one reads anyways. With that said, to wrap this up, if you are looking for more information, free information that our tax dollars already pay for, you would go to the EEOC's official website, EEOC.gov. There is also another amazing website regarding workplace fairness. It is called workplacefairness.org. It is a nonprofit. Okay. So it's not always, there's a lot of ads that pop up, I find out on that website, but I find it very, very beneficial. So workplacefairness.gov or .org. And then the last one, which is an official government website, it's called askjan.org. Ask Jan, which is Job Accommodation Network. And that is a lot of that is for disabilities. And then, of course, you got my website. Yeah,
I was going to say, I mean, I stop by the hrlady.com when I'm looking for news and information. That's where I'm going. But that's just me.
And you know what? Anybody can reach out to me at any time at thehrlady.com. You can call me, text me, or email me, and I'd be more than happy to help you. And if I can't, I will find somebody who can. Any final words, JC?
Oh, this was really informative. Thanks for your time, Wendy, as always.
Absolutely. I do have one final thing to say. If you're looking for a quick and enlightening way to start your day, besides listening to this podcast, consider checking out JC's daily podcast, Interesting Things with JC. The podcast sessions last 2 to 5 minutes. They're very, very informative. They make me crack up laughing, smile, and then sometimes go down a rabbit hole because now I got to research more information on what JC has told me. With that said, we are going to be having other series coming out shortly that are not for little ears. So click onto my website or onto my podcast to hear more on that. Take care, everyone.